as far as the commercial establishment, so labor laws are bifurcated essentially between two kinds of establishments. One, you have factories. Okay, this is a very broad classification I'm talking about. You have factories, and then you have commercial establishments. Okay, now so factories would basically cover those establishments where a manufacturing process is being carried on. Right now, this again is a very interesting area because manufacturing process has been very widely defined, and sometimes, this happens a lot of times during our diligences, that the client, the concerned company, the target company on which we are conducting diligence has not obtained a factory license for its warehouse, okay, because it has taken the view that in the warehouse only certain goods are kept, they are stored. Now we are not basically conducting a manufacturing process there, so we don't need to get a factory license for this particular warehouse. However, if you see the case laws that have developed thus far, courts actually take a very wide view of manufacturing process, and they say that anything that forms part of this manufacturing chain, including storage of these finished products, this would be considered as part of manufacturing process, and therefore you should obtain a factory license. If you haven't, then of course there are criminal liabilities under the Act, although they are not really enforced in practice, but they are there under the Factories Act. So this is with respect to Factories Act, covering entities which conduct manufacturing processes. Now, other commercial establishments, for instance, your information technology companies, hospitals, and educational institutions, now all these will be covered under Shops and Establishments Act of the respective state. Now, what you need to see with respect to a particular jurisdiction is that whether its Shops and Establishment Act covers your establishment in the first place, right? So there are certain states, as Abhyuday mentioned, in Karnataka, you will see a specific exemption under Shops and Establishment Act for IT companies. So you need to first see if the Act actually applies to your establishment. If you see the relevant provision, it says so, but of course, in practice, you see that the labor inspectors actually try to enforce those provisions because there's nothing that is really governing you. Right. See, if you see the Maharashtra Shops and Establishment Act also, it says that establishments set up for the care of people who are, medically unfit, those commercial establishments will not be covered under the Maharashtra Shops and Establishment Act. But if you see the case laws, courts have given a very restrictive view and said that hospitals, the commercial hospitals which have been set up to earn profits, they are not exempted from the applicability, merely because the statute says institutions set up for the care of the sick, right? And you have to give very restricted meaning to this particular provision, and this would essentially include charitable institutions which are set up for the care of these people, right? So you have to see the case laws also that have developed. But yes, there are certain exemptions with respect to certain kinds of institutions under each of the SNE Act. And also, there's another kind of exemption that you will often see in Shops and Establishment Statute, which is with respect to persons occupying managerial position. So all your key managerial personnel, even your whole-time director, even if you call that person an employee, that person will not be governed by the Shops and Establishment Statute because of the express exemption that is given to these people. Of course, Haryana and there are certain other states also where there is no such exemption, and it is, theoretically you can take the view that even such senior people are covered under the Act. So these finer nuances also you need to keep in mind. So as I mentioned before, Factories Act essentially covers the establishments that are set up to carry out manufacturing processes, and often what we the queries that we often encounter is whether an office that has been set up quite close to the factory premises, which is not carrying out any manufacturing process, whether for that you need to obtain a Shops and Establishment certificate, or whether it would be covered under the Factories Act itself. So again, courts have actually, and this was actually one of the issues that we recently encountered, because we had AZB as one of the law firms, and they took the view that you should have taken a factory license for this particular office. But we analyzed a lot of cases, and we formed the view, and we shared this view with the client, and eventually we were able to conclude the deal. And we took the view that the kind of functions that were being carried out in this office was essentially set up only for for carrying out ancillary activities with respect to the factory in question. There was no other purpose that this particular office was serving other than assisting what was happening in the factory premises. So that is one, the kind of functions that this particular office was doing. The other aspect was the proximity test. Okay, so with respect to the kind of functions or with respect to the location, this particular office was proximately located with this factory in question, and therefore we can take the view that this office and its employees are covered under the Factories Act, and they don't have to obtain a separate a registration under the Shops and Establishment Act. So you need to. So these are the practical aspects that we often have to deal with.